punishment I wrote, and I said to him, well, Mr. Walker, what do you think? And he said, I never knew Norman Rockwell had such paint quality. That was amazing. He dressed and went out. Next morning, I called Norman Rockwell and I told him what John Walker said. He'd never seen such paint quality. And Rockwell said, now I can die happy. But he didn't right then. He went on and he did some other things. He went to Houston shortly after that, and he wanted to do something on the Apollo program. And this was way before we went to the moon. So there was nothing really concrete to look at. And this is where the artist's imagination really comes into play. Houston had a plywood makeshift lunar module out in front of the building, and they had people working with it. So Rockwell took some photographs of that, talked with one of the engineers that was doing it, and had a great time. So he got enough information. He did a beautiful painting, and this appeared way before we even knew what the lunar module was going to look like. So it inspired a lot of people. This is a painting by Robert McCall of something that you could never see. So it was perfect for an artist. When the astronauts go around the moon, they land, and then they come back, they're in the spacecraft, and they fly around the moon on their way home. When they get behind the moon, they're out of contact with the Earth. Houston doesn't know what's going on behind the moon. And this is where that rocket that takes them out of lunar orbit will bring them home. So no one knows whether the thing is fired or not. It's a single rocket. You've got one try to make it work. If it works, great. If it doesn't, you have a disaster. So they have to wait until the Apollo pokes its nose around the far side of the moon. And if it does, and it's aimed right, then they know everything works and it's coming home. So McCall wanted to paint the backside of the moon with the Apollo 8 firing attention. Now this is a painting by Jamie Wyatt of the firing room at the Cape just before launch. And I can tell you a story about that, getting into that room, which I'll save for later, because it's a little involved. But it's really a very precious place to be. It's amazing how all the technicians sit with their back to the launch pad. They're staring at their consoles, at their TV screens, monitoring everything that's going on over the pad. And behind them, the real thing is taking place. And this is a photograph I made of Robert Rosenberg during Apollo 11. We were sitting on a mound of grass just outside the fenced area, and Bob was really intrigued by being there. He really loved it. Everything he said the government was doing at that time, from the Vietnam War to riots in the cities, was negative. And this was the only positive thing that he could find to associate with. So he was really pleased to be there. We were sitting there on that mound, and he said, I don't know if I can see it here. Whoops. Let me go back. And let me do this. He said, see that fin up there? And I said, yeah. He said, my taxes paid for that. So he was physically, emotionally involved in what was happening there. And he went on to do, well, let me tell you, he went on to do a series of 34 lithographs, some of the most avant-garde things that were done at the time. This particular thing is Sky Guard, and it's in the Air and Space Museum collection. And he did that by gluing 3 large lithographic stones together and then hand-pulling that lithograph off. So it's just a beautiful work, and as I said, there are 33 more. I think the Hirshhorn has a complete collection. I know there's a complete collection at the National Gallery of Australia, but beyond that, I've lost track. Now, Mitchell Jameson, again, he was on the aircraft carrier during our first mission, and I asked him to go back again on an aircraft carrier for Apollo 11. When the 3 astronauts came back from the moon, I wanted him to be out there to meet them. And when he was on the aircraft carrier, I think it took like a week to get to the moon, and then they were there for several days, and then another week to come back. So he was aboard ship for a long time, and he did a lot of work, a lot of drawing, a lot of painting. And NASA had piped in all the activities on the flight out and the trip down to the moon and the walk on the moon there. So Mitchell was really tuned in to what was happening, even though he was nowhere near there. And he did this monoprint with a lot of drawing on top of it of just what it would seem like to be the first person on this other world and to look up at the sky and look up at the stars and look back at the earth. You know, are you amazed? Are you awestruck? Are you fearful? It's something like Munch might have painted, but it has that almost scream quality about it. So I thought that was a very nice piece, and just about showing it to you. Paul Kelly, again, he was one of the very first artists we took down to the Cape. During Apollo 11, I wanted him to be with the astronauts during the suit-up, during the breakfast, the suit-up, everything early that morning. And he went there, and he had to dress with a little white hat and a white robe on and white things on his booties on his shoes. And he went into the room, and he did a lot of drawing and sketches as they had their breakfast. And then they went into another room, and it began the suit-up process. So he was filling a sketchbook with a lot of really spontaneous work that was really dramatic and really with the moment. And the astronauts were suited up and getting ready to walk out of the building and head for the van that would take them to the launch pad. And Mike Collins, who was suited up, stopped. And he went over to Paul and he said, "Could I look at your drawings?" So Paul said, "Sure." So he began to flip through the pages. And Mike studied the work. I mean, here's somebody about to go out and get on top of a 363-foot launch vehicle that would produce 7.5 million pounds of thrust and head for the moon. And he stops to look at sketches. Now that's cool. That's really being cool. And then the most well-looked-at photograph of the whole Apollo 11 visit to the moon was this picture taken of the astronaut standing on the moon. And of course, Andy Warhol took it and added his touch to it. And this is about the point that we begin to get into some other things that new and exciting works that Bert Ulrich had a hand in. And what I'd like to do is turn the podium over to him for his presentation.